Okay, good morning, everyone. And thank you all for joining us this morning. And this is the second day of the International Conference on Digital Forensics and Cybercrime. We had a fantastic day yesterday where we had a great keynote speaker and a lively discussion through the whole day. And right to the bitter end, we had a lot of audience in the sessions. So I'm very pleased with the turnout of the visitors or to the attendees of the conference. And again, want to thank all of the discussants, the authors, and the program committee and the conference managers for all the wonderful job they have done in organizing this conference. And again, just so that I can reiterate, the next year's conference is going to be in Singapore, and we expect that to be in person, and that'll be another great event, where we expect at least 3 or 4 times the number of papers we have here, because of the collaborations we have with Interpol and several other organizations and universities. So I hope to see all of you in person next year in Singapore. And without much delay, I would like to start up the program for the second day. Our first coordinator would be Makan Porzandi. He is going to be the session chair for the first session, and he will announce the Best Paper Award for the papers which were submitted to the conference. Makan?
Thank you, Sanjay. Once again, thank you for having me here, guys. I just really feel honored just to be, chairing the first session of the second day. As a program committee, we had a very, a tough decision to make. Who would be the best paper? And then, we went through all the different, papers, and there were so many good papers. Finally, we decided to have 2 best papers. So, in contrary to have 1 best paper, we will have this year 2 best papers. And for that, I am going, without further ado, to announce them based on the, I would just start with the first paper. It's based on the alphabetical order of the first author. So the first best paper is Make Remote Forensics Investigation Forensic Again, Increasing the Evidential Value of Remote Forensic Investigations. The authors are Marcel Busch, Florian Nicolai, Fabian Fletcher, Christian Ruckert, Christoph Safferling, and Felix Freling. They are all from, not all of them, Marcel is from Friedrich Alexander University, Erlangen-Nuremberg, and the others are from Friedrich Alexander University. No, they're all from Erlangen-Nuremberg, Germany, sorry. So I would also announce the second paper before asking the authors to comment on that. The second best paper is a digital forensic approach for optimizing the investigation of hit and run accidents. The authors are Marianne Waltereit of University of Duisburg-Essen, Germany. And the co-authors are Peter Zdankin, Viktor Matkovic, Torben Weiss from University of Duisburg-Essen, and Maximilian Afhoff from Rheinbyte Systems company. Let me just join me, just you all have, and a round of applause for them virtually. And now, without further ado, I would ask the authors from the first paper, Make Remote Forensic Investigation Forensic Again, Increasing the Evidence Value of Remote Forensic Investigation. To one of them, please do have a couple of words. So I believe it's Marcel. Yes.
That's me, I guess. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. So, so the title of this paper is quite a mouthful, I know. So I'm very glad to receive this award. And so if you listen to our presentation, you may have noticed that this is a very deeply technical paper, coming from a systems engineering background. And on the other hand, it also has all of these aspects that bring the law perspective onto these technical concepts. And so this is kind of special. I haven't seen that very often, and I'm really happy to be in this environment at our hometown university, the FAU, that our computer science department has such a lively and ongoing collaboration with the law department. So I want to thank my co-authors for making this paper reality, and especially Professor Feiling for mentoring the work behind this, and Fabian, who primarily worked on the prototype and went the extra mile to actually make it work. So, and thank you also for hosting this event, the ICDF2C 2020, and yeah, thank you for giving us a stage for our ideas.
Thank you, Masa, very much. Let me just now ask, I believe it's now the second best paper is a digital forensic approach for optimizing the investigation of hit and run accidents. So if one of the authors wants just to say a couple of words.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much for the warm introduction and the opportunity to say a few words. I would like to say also that I'm very glad to receive this award and grateful for the chance to present our work here at this conference. I was always looking forward to, in particular, present my work here at this ICDCF2C conference. And I would also like to express my special thanks to my PhD supervisor, Torben Weiss, and to all of my co-authors and colleagues, and also former colleagues at the university for their help with this research project. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure to have you guys with us. I believe it was just, you know, hopefully this would be the beginning of a very fruitful, you know, career in research. So I believe that we could start with the first session 4, which is the, you know, the first session today. I want us to begin, before starting this session, I want us also to thank and present our discussant for this session, which is Dr. P. Vinod Bhattacharipad. Dr. Bhattacharipad has more than 33 years of experience, you know, in the computer science, with 18 years of experience in digital forensics. He is the Honorary Chief Technology Advisor to the Director General of the Police in Kerala State, India. And he is, you know, has extensive experience when it comes to the forensics. He is the author of the book, Judiciary Friendly Forensics of Software Copyright Infringement. So thank you, Dr. Vinod, just to be here. And with this, I want us to start with the first paper. And the first paper is it's titled Adapting to Local Conditions, Similarities and Differences in Anonymous Online Market Between Chinese and English-Speaking Communities. The author, this work is presented by Gengqian Zhu, and he is, you know, is a researcher at Network Science and Cyberspace in Tsinghua University, and he's working in web security and threat intelligence. So if we could just have his, you know, presentation now.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us. In this topic, we will talk about the similarities and differences in anonymous online markets between Chinese and English-speaking communities. We present a comparative analysis of the Chinese and English anonymous online markets from market operation mechanism, market security mechanism, and sales situation. And we discuss the impact of law enforcement agencies' crackdown on these markets, as well as the focus and methods of anonymous online market governance. And my talk today includes the following 3 parts, and we will first introduce anonymous online markets and our research data. The biggest difference between the anonymous online market and a regular online market is that participants are highly anonymous. Participants cannot know the true identity of others, and in particular, because of this, the anonymous online markets are full of illegal transactions, such as drugs and personal information data. And the major participants of an anonymous online market include buyers, vendors, and market platforms. Buyers buy goods in the market and use cryptocurrency to pay, and vendors sell goods in the market and pay commissions to the market platform when they obtain revenue. And market platforms provide a safe trading environment for buyers and vendors and uses advanced settlement methods such as escrow to reduce transaction risks. And to study the characteristics of Chinese and English anonymous online markets, we collect data from multiple Chinese and English anonymous online markets. And our crawling data includes our historical research data on Dream Market and 4 Chinese and English anonymous online markets data. And then we will combine with previous research, analyze, and summarize the characteristics of Chinese and English anonymous online markets. And with that data, we perform a comparative analysis on the market operation mechanism, market security mechanism, and sales situation between Chinese and English anonymous online markets. So we first take a look at the web server software used by the anonymous online markets. We tested 8 Chinese and English anonymous online markets and find 6 of them are built using Nginx. And only 1 anonymous online market is built by Apache, and the other one is by Windows IIS Server. And compared with the English anonymous online markets, Chinese anonymous online markets are more likely to use the Nginx server. And for the anonymous online markets with a large number of users, Nginx server can help the owner of anonymous online markets to operate stably when accessed by multiple users. On the other hand, it also enables the anonymous online market to better respond to DDoS threats. And we also take a look at how the transactions are made in anonymous online markets and find that those markets usually support multiple kinds of cryptocurrencies and also support multiple settlement methods such as escrow in all markets and multisig that appeared in recent years. So a quick summary on the operational mechanism of the anonymous online markets. About web server software, we find that most markets prefer Nginx, especially Chinese ones. And different markets may support different kinds of cryptocurrencies, but they all support Bitcoin. And compared with multi-currency support in the English markets, Chinese markets tend to support Bitcoin only. And also the English markets have various settlement methods, while the Chinese markets only support escrow. And we then turn to the security mechanisms adopted by the market. And first, let's look at account security. When a user registers an account in the markets, a username and login password needed to be set. And also, English anonymous online markets usually require users to set a 6-digit personal identification number or PIN when registering an account. And the PIN can improve the security of the user's account and is usually used when a user trades with others or resets the account, which can better protect the account from the threat of password leaks. And similar to the PIN, Chinese anonymous online markets usually support payment password. And as shown in this picture, payment password is required to protect the user's property and is usually used when the user pays for the goods. And to further improve the security of user accounts, English anonymous online markets recommend that users should set up PGP public key after registering accounts. Account that sets the PGP public key can log in through 2-factor authentication, which require a user to have both account password and the PGP public keys. And the PGP can also be used for communication between buyers and vendors, which protects end-to-end communication between the two parties from man-in-the-middle attacks. And by contrast, Chinese anonymous online markets pay more attention on the privacy of vendors. For example, Darknet China hides the middle part of the vendor ID and only the first and last characters are showed. Anonymous online markets are constantly facing threats from law enforcement agencies and competitors, and most of the attacks are DDoS attacks. So to protect the market from DDoS attacks, many English anonymous online markets limit the frequency of user access. And if the limit is reached, the anti-DDoS page of the market will be returned. And on the other hand, some Chinese anonymous online markets deploy a verification page before the login page. And users need to complete the verification before they can access the market login page. And many anonymous online markets now use multi-domain strategies to deal with cyber attacks. And when a certain domain name of a market cannot be accessed, users can access through other domain names in the mirror lists. And currently, most English anonymous online markets and some Chinese anonymous online markets use this strategy. So a quick summary on the security mechanisms adopted by the markets. We find that English markets use PIN codes and PGP encryption mechanisms to ensure account and transaction security. PGP is generally not supported in the Chinese markets, but measures such as payment password is supported. And to ensure the normal access of real users, anonymous online markets will provide mirror lists of market domain names. And the English markets will also limit user access frequency and set up DDoS protection pages to ease the pressure of the attacks. And Chinese markets often have a verification page, and users sometimes need to verify themselves before they can continue their visiting. And finally, we investigate the sales of goods in the Chinese and English markets. We find that the situation can be different for Chinese and English markets because of social environments, market demand, and laws and regulations. And from the picture here, we can see that the most important product in the English markets is drugs, followed by digital products. And by contrast, the most important goods in Chinese markets are information data and digital products. And personal information data is used by criminals for marketing and fraud purposes. And we conclude that both in English markets and Chinese markets, digital goods are very popular. And we then dig into the most popular digital goods in the anonymous online markets and perform comparative analysis between Chinese and English online markets. And first, let's look at information data. In both Chinese and English anonymous online markets, account passwords and other personal information are sold. And it is worth noting that information data in the Chinese market accounts for about half of the total goods volume, while in the English market, the ratio is only 4.9%. However, when we look at the total transactions of Chinese and English markets, the numbers are very close. Another kind of popular digital goods is related to pornography. And similarly, we find that these goods on sale in the Chinese market has a great proportion than that in the English market. However, our data analysis shows that users of the Chinese market are far less willing to buy such products than users in the English markets. And the third kind of popular digital goods is hacking technologies, and we divide them into 4 categories: malware, tools, tutorials, and services. And by our analysis, we find that malware and tools sold in Chinese anonymous online markets are more focused on stealing private information, while similar goods in English anonymous online markets are more focused on phishing and stealing social network accounts. And for tutorials, English anonymous online markets are still focused on phishing and account theft. But goods on Chinese markets are more focused on Kali Linux and penetration tests, and paid tutorials on security training platforms and hacking technology books. And in terms of hacking services, most vendors in Chinese anonymous online markets only target illegal or overseas websites involving underground products and usually do not accept attacks on websites of sensitive businesses such as governments and institutes. But in the English anonymous online markets, most vendors provide service that can target any websites. So a quick summary on the sales situation of the online goods. Information data products sold in the Chinese and English markets are very similar, and among them, buyers in the Chinese market often use it for targeted fraud, while buyers in the English market use it for tax fraud or credit card fraud. And pornographic products have a large proportion in the Chinese market, but by contrast, users in the English markets have a stronger buying intention than users in the Chinese markets. And hacking technology products mainly include malicious programs, tools, tutorials, and hacking services. And the sales of hacker technology products in the Chinese and English markets are basically similar, but there are differences in the functions and purposes of use. And finally, some discussions on ethics, law enforcement interventions, and anonymous online market governance. And for ethical considerations, first, the data we collected is public. Anyone can find these data by browsing the market web pages, so there is no risk of exposing users' privacy. And in addition, we adopt a conservative data crawling method and limits the frequency of the crawler so that normal access of the websites are not affected. And facts have shown that the crackdown on the English markets by law enforcement agencies cannot completely prevent the transactions from happening, but only forces them to move to other markets. And for the Chinese markets, they can also operate stably after being attacked, which shows greater stability than the English markets. And for the governance of anonymous online markets, the best strategy is to reduce the demand of the sold products. And to achieve this goal as much as possible, for physical goods transactions, illegal transactions can be blocked from the transportation level. And from information and data products, the protection of personal information should be strengthened and increase its crackdown on crimes such as precision fraud, especially for the actual situation of the Chinese markets, which have a large proportion of information data. And therefore, researchers can focus more on the consumption habits of customers in the language communities where the market belongs to, and then discover potential cyber criminal goods and behaviors, take measures before they appear in the anonymous online markets. So to sum up, in this work, we have collected data on multiple Chinese and English anonymous online markets, and combined with previous works, we have compared the Chinese and English markets from multiple aspects. We also discussed the impact of law enforcement agencies' crackdowns on these markets, as well as the key areas and potential research directions for the anonymous online markets in the future. So that is my talk today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. So I believe that Gengtian Zhu is here just to answer the questions. Just a reminder for everyone, I believe that we did it yesterday, but let me remind that you guys, you could just ask questions through the chat, and as we continue, we are going to obviously leave you leave your question. Is the author is here actually? I just realized that I don't know if it's here. Yeah, it's here. So I unmute you.
Yes,
Yingchen, are you here? I believe I see you. I unmuted you. You could just feel free just to answer the questions. Now I just opened the floor for Professor. Just I'm so sorry, but at the pad, I'll actually ask the discussants just to know if he wants to ask questions. Professor, I unmuted. Well, yes.
Okay.
Okay, we have the
Thank you,
author
thank
here.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Makin. I'm here. Am I heard there?
If you could just talk a little bit stronger, we would appreciate.
Uh, am I heard there? Or no?
Okay.
Yeah. Is that okay?
Well, go ahead. I mean, if you could talk louder, that would be better.
I see. Okay.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
it's much better now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for a good presentation. This paper is on adapting to local conditions. It's mainly a comparative study between the Chinese and the English markets. Interestingly, it's a comparative study and not an empirical study. Then its comparison was mainly on the IT infrastructure and not on the security or forensic aspects. Very interesting statistics. Perhaps this must be a beginning of a big work. That's what I felt. I don't know. The author can properly answer that. It's a beginning of a good work. And I look forward in another 2 or 3 years, the author will have a better paper on this. I do have a small question on, since it's a preliminary work on a comparative study on the Chinese and the Indian, Chinese and the English or anonymous sites. Did you do anything on the forensic aspects, or do you have any information on the forensic aspects of these anonymous sites, or the security? Either security aspect or forensic aspect we can translate. Is there anything that? Is the author here? I think he's here.
Yeah, he's here. He's here.
Yeah.
So, Gengchen, did you get the question? So, this is the beginning of a great work. Obviously, I believe we were talking about the context, and yesterday we were talking about the fact that it's so important to get and involve context into the security. This is a good example of how we could just provide different contexts. That would be for English speaking or Chinese. But how do you see that? How do you see this being developed into a, more forensic security fields? Okay. Gengchen, do you hear us?
Yes. Can you be slowly say it again?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was good that we have this work because it gives us a good context, okay, about English speaking and Chinese speaking, markets. Now the question here is just that, how we could use this context information to build, more security tools, for example, to track, malicious, actors in these markets. We could just have that, you could just translate that to the Chinese, have the answer, and just come back to me in English. It doesn't matter. Okay.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear?
Yeah, we could hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you say if we get enough information about the anomaly market, of course we can know maybe to check the vendors and know what they are selling, and their behavior to check the true identity of the sellers in true world. Yeah, I think we still have a lot of work to build a safer mechanism to check the maybe malicious vendors in the real world, I think.
Okay. So kind of it's a future work. We have another question. I would just take this and then and the other question that we had in the chat here is just that since the scale in the Chinese community, it's actually, sorry, it's Habib Luafi who asked the question. And the question is the following. Actually, you could just also read the question in the chat while I'm just mentioning it. Since the scale in the Chinese community is usually very high in terms of hardware resources and even the number of the users, how that compares to other communities? What is the impact on forensic solutions? Mainly, I believe Habib is asking here just that given the size of the market and the number of users and what is involved, how this would impact the overall forensics in that environment. I believe that he refers to the scale, if you have a 200, 300,000 users, you could just use some tools. If you have 1 million, 2 million, 200 million users, obviously the scale is different and the tools that you could use needs to be much more efficient. Just as one an example. How the author sees that? Okay. What we could do though, here is just that, we have another another question. So what's the proportion between encrypted and plain text data you collected in this market? What I would propose here is just that you take these questions and you answer the respondents by email. What do you think?
Okay.
Okay. I guess that there is not, so I guess that the answer is yes. Okay, it's okay. So what we would do here is just that we just switch to the next paper, and I thank you. I thank the author, and I thank everybody just to be part of this for the questions. But what I would propose here is just that we take the questions by email. Now let me introduce you to our second paper, which is effective medical image copy move forgery localization based on texture descriptors. And the work is going to be presented by Jackie Shi. She is a graduate student in the School of Computer Science in Nankai University, and she is engaged in the research of medical image tempering detection and localization. Jackie, are you here? Could we just, have her video going on now?
Hello everyone, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk about my work. I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Jiaqi Shi. I'm a student from Nankai University in China. The subject of my presentation is a method for medical image copy move forgery detection and localization. The presentation is divided into four main sections. Firstly, I will introduce the current problems in the medical image tampering and the motivation for our work. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the specific process of image forgery localization. Then I will show you the experimental results and conclusion. The telemedicine system is rapid imagery. Through this system, doctors can judge health status of patients, but modern image editing software have been able to achieve the degree of realism. Sensitive information of patients may be maliciously tampered during network transmission. The lesion regions may be spread or covered up, causing doctors to misdiagnose. This figure is from the paper published in 2016. It shows percentage of papers containing problematic images. This contained 20,621 medicine research papers published in 40 different journals in the fields of biology. 3.8% of the papers contained problematic images. It made unsuccessful conclusions, reduce the credibility of the articles, and seriously affect the integrity of the authors. Now, image forensics methods are divided into active tampering and passive tampering. In active tampering, most of the medical image algorithm utilize the watermarking technique. But watermarking is additional information. It impairs the visual quality of the images. More importantly, doctors may miss this noise. In passive tampering, most of the methods are directed at nature images. They are not good at medical images. Medical images are smoother than the nature images, and their texture and structure information is significant. Due to the particularity of medical images and the low applicability of exciting tamper detection approaches, developing a forgery detection scheme suitable for medical images is imperative. There are many exciting passive tampering manipulations, where copy move is one common manipulation in medicine images. For example, this is our original images. This is a copy move tamper image, and this is the tamper region. It refers to duplicate this area to other locations in the same image. Of course, the copied area may be rotated or scaled before pasting. So we propose an efficient and robust copy move forgery localization scheme for medical images. These are our contributions. Firstly, we obtain texture images by applying LBP root texture descriptor to highlight texture structural information of medical images. Then we decrease the contrast threshold of SIFT and extract the SIFT key points in LBP root images. This way can extract plenty of feature points which have high discrimination in smooth regions. And experimental results on the forged DDSIM datasets demonstrate that our method achieves higher FE scores compared with existing schemes, even under rotation, scaling, and ending Gaussian noise and JPEG compression. Then I will introduce our method. Our method is divided into 3 parts: feature extraction, feature matching, and forgery localization. Feature extraction is a key step. The quality of feature discrimination directly affects the accuracy of forgery detection and localization, especially for medical images with rich texture information. This is a detected image. These red dots are the detected feature points. These yellow ones are the lines of successfully matched feature points. These red areas are the final detected forgery copy move regions. And last, this is the output binary graph. In feature extraction, firstly, we utilize the SLIC method to segment the medical image into non-overlapping and irregular superpixel patches. The proper intentional size of the patches is important to gain convincing forgery detection results for different shapes of forgery regions. The details will be discussed in the experimental part later. Most real medical images are noisy images, so then we use mean filtering. It eliminates irrelevant information and extracts useful image features. In fact, noise reduction results in loss of information such as texture and edges. But LBP route can enhance images and increase the contrast between foreground and background so that creating a relatively clean input for the subsequent extraction of the saved features and achieving better detection results. Doctors diagnose the disease through image texture analysis. The extra information of the image can't be ignored. On the contrary, the complex texture structure information helps the forgery localization to be more precise. LBP route can extract the extraction information of smooth regions from medical images effectively. But it makes the feature lose the direction information. We use the SIFT. It has directory information and are robust against various attacks. SIFT and LPP route can complement each other. They are indispensable to ensure the accuracy and robustness of the algorithm. As a result, the number of the SIFT key points detected in smooth area will be reduced to granting that plenty of feature points can be generated in smooth regions. We decrease the SIFT contrast threshold. In these images, A and B are the same image. C and D are the same. A and C are obtained by directly extracting SIFT key points in the original medical images and then applying simple matching. There are some mismatched feature points, and the number of correctly matched feature points is small. B and D show SIFT key points extracted and matched in the LBP route texture map. Since LBP can enhance the texture structure information, the feature points can be matched more accurately and in large quantity in contrast. So we say that safety and LPP rows together ensure the accuracy and robustness of the algorithm. In feature matching, we calculate the including distance between the feature points in different image blocks. If the distance is not greater than the threshold, the matching between the feature points is successful. We record the number of feature points successfully matched between each pair of image patches as a matching coefficient. If the matching coefficient is smaller than the threshold, we remove this image block pair. After the feature matching, the marked feature point pairs are obtained, but this is only the approximate location of the forged regions. We need to locate precise forged regions. For each suspected region, we compared it with superpixel blocks adjacent to it. If their color features are similar, the superpixel block is included in the suspected regions. Last, we applying the morphological close operation into the suspected regions. The close operation can fill the gaps in the merged regions. Next, I will present the experimental results from these three aspects. We use the DDSM database. It is established by medical institution to store breast cancer image, and it included more than 10,000 medical images. In a certain medical image, we randomly copy an arbitrary shape area in the cancer regions and paste it to any random position in the same image. It don't leave a mark, and the naked eyes can't distinguish whether it is tampering or not, and tampering with the localization. Our experimental evaluation indicators are divided into image level and pixel level. We use FU scores, true positive rate and false positive rate, to evaluate the performance of the methods. The higher the FE, the better the performance of the real algorithm. This table lists the results on medical image of the DDSM datasets obtained by different copy move forgery detection methods. Among the 6 baselines, these 2 methods aim to medical images. Others are for nature images. At the image level and the pixel level, our method has a considerable performance compared to other algorithms, and achieves 95.07% high precision temporary location results. This proves the effectiveness of the algorithm. We test the performance of our method against the various attacks. These images respectively show the FE curves for the image level against the different attacks: compression, rotation, scaling, JPEG compression, and Gaussian noise addition. The red line represents our method. It's completely superior to other algorithms. This picture are about the pixel level. Our scheme is sensitive to JPEG compression with a quality factor less than 60. In addition, it exhibits better stability under other attacks. These line graphs show the robustness of our algorithm. This picture is about the initial block size of superpixel in SLIC. The blue line represents FE scores at the pixel level. That is accuracy. The red line represents the speed. A large initial blocks reduce the localization accuracy, where a smaller initial block brings a greater computational cost. In order to choose a suitable initial block size, we win the localization accuracy and detection speed. Finally, we choose 300 and the initial block size in our algorithm. As mentioned before, there is a complementary relationship between noise reduction and LBP route. Neither of them is dispensable. From this table, the last two algorithms use the LBP route, so their accuracy is improved after the mean filters, and it has no effect on the other algorithms. Finally, I will draw the conclusion and future work. Medical images are smooth and have complex texture structures. In order to overcome these problems, we combine the block-based and keypoint-based technique knowledge and use the SLIC, LBP route, and SIFT methods. It is a serious challenge to extract high discriminating features in smooth and texture-rich medical images. But we do it in this way, and our methods are effective and robust. Despite this, there is much room for improving the robustness against JPEG compression and increasing the practicality of our method. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the, for the great presentation, Jackie. I just want to open the floor with Professor Bahat Tiripad, and then, after that, we would just switch to the, other questions from the chat room. Professor, please go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Makan. Sorry to say that the voice was very, very low, that I was not able to hear what she said. Anyway, leave it. I was able to watch what she wrote on the screen. It was mainly on the what I was able to pick up was the paper was on medical image. It's more on copy move forgery, and too much of emphasis on texture images. A little bit on pixels and other things also. She was more on the technology aspects of these things, and not on the. I mean the imaging technology part of that. More on that, and again, as just as in the previous paper, it was not on the security and the forensic aspects of these things. Perhaps it might come in the future. It might come. So let her answer. I suppose she's here.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. Let her answer on that. Now, I have a specific question on this. That is it a hex level study? I mean, if it is a hex level study, then my question is, with the original image is slightly tampered with, I mean, in this way, copy move and other things, what all original details will be lost? The original, I should say, the original meta details like date stamp, time stamp, the camera used, the I mean, what do you say, the software used, the version of the software, then many other meta details which are mainly used for mainly used during the crime investigation. What all details are lost when a small copy move forgery is done?
Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, we do.
I can. Yeah, I can.
Sorry, I can't understand you. Please speak slowly again, okay?
Hello.
Yeah, I mean,
Hello.
I could just comment on this. I believe I could just try to summarize what Vinod asked. The question here is just that when you do these forgeries on these images, obviously there are parts of the metadata which are lost. For example, I believe he mentioned, the camera version, the timestamp, and all this.
Camera used.
Sorry?
The camera used, the version of the software that was used I mean, that is used in the camera. Then which app was used, which camera app was used. I mean, like that, a lot of meta details that we normally use for police investigation of these types of forgery or fabrication. Now my question is, during this copy move, what all different meta details are lost? These important meta details are lost.
So Jackie, why can't we use this, the loss of this metadata to detect the forgery?
Yeah, I'll tell you why this question. That's more important than what is this question. It's like,
okay.
It's like during a medical evaluation, what she said is right. But during a police investigation of such cases, she didn't mention anything about that. Suppose a criminal case comes up, the data that are required to establish the originality and the integrity of the software, or to establish the copy move for forgery, we need a lot of meta details. And these meta details, I mean, she didn't mention. But she mentioned about the meta details that are required to establish the originality and integrity of the image and other copy move. I mean, during this or evidence of copy move, she mentioned all those things, but she didn't mention about the criminal aspects of I mean, this copy move forgery. I mean, does she have anything on that?
Yeah. So, Jackie, did you get the question?
Sorry, I can't understand. My English is not very good.
Okay, so let's just switch to the next question. You see that the question on the chat, why is the texture, is a Vinny Lee who asked the question. And the question is just that, why is the texture information of medical images important? How do you emphasize texture features in your algorithm? You see that in the chat. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Doctors diagnose the disease through image texture analysis. The texture information of the image can be ignored in medical image forgery detection. On the contrary, the complex texture structure information helps the foreground localization to be more precise. And we use LBP route to emphasize texture features. Noise reduction results in loss of information such as texture and age, but LBP route can enhance image and increase the contrast between foreground and background, so that creating a relatively clean input for the subsequent extracting of saved features and achieving better detection results. And then we use the SIFT algorithm. The SIFT is applied to the LBP road texture information to extract feature points. It can obtain key points that have higher ability to represent image texture information, and it have a stronger discrimination. But medical image are smoother comparing with nature images. In smooth area, the extreme contrast values are often very low. Any extreme value with a contrast value less than the threshold is rejected as a final SIFT key point. As a result, the number of SIFT key points detected in smooth areas will be reduced. But a small number of feature points obviously can't be accurately located in faulted regions. So to granting that a large number of feature points can be generated in smooth regions, we decrease the SIFT contrast threshold. That's all.
Okay, that was a good answer. Now there was another question by Habib Louafe, and Habib asked a question. You can just read it in the chat. I'll just repeat it for the people. What are the JPEG quality parameter values, quality factor, and resolution ratio that can be used to have an acceptable prediction quality?
We do some experimental. Our scheme is more sensitive to JPEG compression with the quality factor less than 60. So we when the quality factor less than 16, our scheme is not very good. Okay.
Okay, but what would be okay? So what is the normal value then? 16. You said that below 16, you are not good. What is the normal value used for JPEG? I actually, to be honest, I don't know. Is it the normal value 16? How it compares to a normal compression?
If the quality factor is normally our algorithm is results is about 19%.
Okay, the normal is about 19. So your approach would still fit in. From performance point of view, I have a question. You use, distance between blocks, okay, just to define to find actually the suspect blocks. What would happen from performance point of view when there are too many blocks? From real point of view here, just that when you have, this is kind of as you increase the number of blocks, it takes longer and longer to compute to find out the suspect blocks. So have you considered, the effect of an explosion in the number of distance computation when you have many blocks?
We do the experimental in our paper. The choice of initial block size of the algorithm is 300. A large initial block reduce the localization accuracy, but a smaller initial block brings a greater computation cost. Okay. In order to choose a suitable initial block size, when the localization accuracy and detection speed. During the process of changing the initial block from large to small, the accuracy of temporary localization is continuously improved, and the calculation cost is increased. When the initial blocks are small, the number of segmented image blocks increase, and the amount of SLIC calculation increase. More importantly, the computation cost of the feature block matching process after segmentation will increase sharply, considering that when the initial blocks are less than 300, the calculation cost rises sharply, but the improvement in position accuracy bring by it is not so obviously. After when we chose 300 as the initial block size in our algorithm.
So mainly we just have the size of the, the algorithm, the size of the blocks, which just has to have an effect on the performance. And then, you decided just to, the optimal value for you is a 300 bytes. Okay, good. Unfortunately, I don't know if if you Professor Wienand has a problem. I mean, I'm just going to write down what I believe I understood from the question. This would be our last question just in this session. We have a couple of minutes, so we'll just take the opportunity to ask the question. And the question here is just that how the, I try just to write the question Vinod had, and the question is that, many often the method that for the image is considered for forensics. Okay. So how your approach would, I mean, what happens, how your approach, or does your approach does your approach detect the changes in these metadata for the file, for the image? So, I mean, the idea here is just that many often the metadata like the camera type, you know, timestamp, stuff like this are used for forensics. How your approach could detect these changes or help to, you know, the forensics to detect changes on those metadata.
No, that was not my question. Sorry, Makan. Yeah, I'll type it here. I mean,
So JK, you have the question. Let me read that while you just think about your answer. For crime forensics, you need metadetails like the data stamp, timestamp, the camera app version used. Now, the question is, do any of these important metadetails lost during this forgery?
No, this is not in our algorithm. This maintain details. I think it is not lost, and in our algorithm, we can't put the information in any images, and any information in any images, and the images information is not lost.
The additional information here is just that you explained its medical and imaging aspects, but my question is on its forensic aspects. Guys, I would really love to continue this discussion, but unfortunately we need just to move forward. Jackie, I would invite you just to answer by email to this question, because unfortunately we have just to switch to the next presentation, which is neural network, excuse me, neural representation, learning-based binary code authorship attribution. This would be presented by Feng Zhen. He is a master student of Zhen's University of Posts and Telecommunications. So please just, you know, just let's start with his presentation, and we could just talk back about this through email. Thank you, Jackie, for your questions, for your answers.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Feng Zhen. I am from Xi'an University of Post and Telecommunications. The topic of my presentation is use representation learning to recognize programmers. My presentation will include these 4 parts. First, the background of our research. Second, the module we have presented in the paper. Third, experiments and results on dataset. And the last, some conclusions we have got. Firstly, I would like to introduce the background of our research. The authorship attribution has extracted a set of features from the code to represent the programmer's code style to identify the animal programmers. It can be used in software program fixes, malware detection, and other fields. In recent years, relative fieldwork have been conducted on authorship attribution, which mainly falls into 2 categories: authorship attribution on source code and authorship attribution on binary code. The former is often difficult to about source code in actual execution. The latter, the accuracy of this bust match depends on quality of many perfect feature extraction stages. So we attempted to adopt an MPI module to achieve faster and accurately fine-grained programmers identification on function layers. Secondly, I would like to introduce the approach in our paper. Our process is shown in the figure. First, disassemble the exe file use IDA to get the function information. Then the function information is fed into an MPI for analysis and the other function is obtained. The full name of an MPI is Natural Modeling Basis Programmer Identification. It can analyze the structure and the sequence of functions. Mainly includes 3 parts. The first part is extract the structure features of functions. We will use deep work to extract the structure information of the binary code. The basic process is shown in the figure. The first part is get the control flow graph of the function. The second part encodes the control flow graph to generate a directed graph. The basic blocks as nodes and the curves between the basic blocks are it. The third part is to use random walks to traverse the graph to get multiple paths of the graph. The first part is to send multiple paths, granted the word-to-work, to generate a vector representation for each node. The second part is to instruct the sequence features of function. Since the instructions of basic block are excited sequentially, before obtaining the sequence features, we first need to abstract the instructions. For our case, we do not care whether a Y6 is assigned to register EAX or a var10 is assigned. Only need to consider the dependence between instruction contexts. So the 2 instructions move EAX6 and move EAX10 should be considered the same. However, if the instruction abstraction is too strong, it will make the programmer's style, features, and very difficult to identify. Therefore, the level of instruction abstraction is a question we'll discuss. In this grade, we have formulated the following rules for instruction abstraction. Give a set of abstracted assemble instruction sequence. It is permitted to utilize skipgram to learn embedding of each instruction. Employ generating the embeddings for each basic block. LSTM is known to learn the sequentiality, dependence, and straight to align the positions and context for the instance in the input sequence. Considering the same instruction might play more significant roles in a function, LSTM is able to attend such instructions and learn a comprehensive and contexted embeddings for the whole instruction sequence. In this work, we employ long short-term memories to address the vanishes and implemented graded insurance. Each instruction in the input sequence is faster embedded in the vector space. Afterwards, the module reads the important instruction sequence through LSTM units to obtain the basic block vector. The last part is to clarify the features. First, we fill the structure features of function with the sequence feature. We obtain the sequence basis and the structure basis features of the function so the able to filter instruction method. In order to consider the programmed code style for multiple positives, we fill the two functions. Through Paul's work, we found that the more programmers, the lower the accuracy. If we can reduce the number of programmers, it can improve accuracy. Therefore, we proposed a character method to character programmers with similar features into the character. When feeding an animal pieces of code, first determine which character it belongs to, and then determine which other it belongs to in the corresponding character. This avoids negative effect on the results when there are too many labels. Okay, now we move to the part of experiment. We follow the Google Code Gem used in Provis as the shape attribution works as a dataset. Call it C++ code writing by 191 programmers for Google Code Gem. It consists of 13112 programmers and 268796 functions. In the following parts, firstly, we used different classifiers to analyze two performers of NMPI in the other shape attribution task to determine the best classifier. Then, compare with our results with Provis works demonstrates that we imparted the accuracy of the other shape attribution task. Finally, we show the determination of various experimental parameters and the impact on the results. We use DAN, SVM, and random filter to comprehensive experiments, and the results are shown in table. We observe that DAN has the highest accuracy. The DAN network has strong nonlinear mapping capable, and safe learning and adaptive capabilities. It can adjust the structure according to the task and perform automatic learning, so it has the best classification accuracy. Random first is an example learning. It belongs to the big tab. By combining multiple web classifiers, the final result is weighted or averaged to make the all-Y mode results with higher accuracy and generalization performance. But since our task is a multi-classification, when using random forces to classification, the classifier cannot learn the relationship between features and the programs well. And in order to prove that, we have made great progress in the field. We compared it with the Provis experiment results. Readable policies amassed over example programmer as a shape attribution technology by combining the structure features of control field graph with features such as idioms and n-gram, achieved 70% accuracy among 15 programmers and 51 accuracy among 191 programmers. We compare the results of NMPI programmer identification with results as table. The results show that we have imparted accuracy and applied the technology to large dataset. Results at 1900 coding stair features are used to result position coding stairs, where we used two features. This shows that our features is more powerful in representation and the encoding stair rated in extreme binaries. This also shows that user natural network can automatically learn useful features in binary code to judge the programmer. Even where the classifier used SVM, NMPI performs very well in identifying programmers, which shows that our method is more powerful and reliable for programmer identification. In addition to, we posit we use natural networks DNA to perform programmer other shape attribution at large scale achieve higher accuracy. Not only that, we also analyzed the influence of variable on the results of the experiment. The red figure is classification results for different features and determination of sample size. In order to explore each feature with better represented the other, we respectively use the independent features for classification and compute features for classification. The result is shown in red figure. The results show that our function features classification results are much higher than the individual features classification results. In addition to, we found the sequence-based features are more accurate than structure-based features. Then, in order to achieve higher accuracy in fewer samples, we explore the relationship between sample size and accuracy. Although these people conducted experiments at the function length, the number of functions per programmer is uncertain. Therefore, we use the number of programmers of each other as a simple number to identify the programmer and validate the results. Since deep learning requires a large dataset, but considering that more programmer code cannot be obtained in actual sensors, and we can find that when sample size is 20, the accuracy rate is close to +19. Therefore, we perform more other shape attribution in real life. The size of the simple other can be set to 15. Besides, in order to verify whether the tree structure classifier can reduce the impact of too many programmers on the results, we set up two classifier structures. One is a tree structure classifier, and the other is a simple classifier. That is, DNA is used for classification after feature function. We compare the accuracy of two classifiers to verify our obtained and in figure. The results show we use the tree structure classifier and the number of programmers increases. The accuracy rate decreases load, which can impose the accuracy rate of 5% under the same number of programmers. Now we come to the last part. Conclusion in this paper, we designed a module NMPI extractor features based on sequence and structure, and use SVM DAN random forest to classify. We compare the accuracy of classification of single feature and classify of compound feature. Observe the relationship between the number of sample per level and accuracy. Our experiment proved that DNA as classifier can better capture the classifier of the other. That's all my presentation. If you have any question, please feel free to contact me. Here is my email address. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a very good presentation for your presentation, and I'm just open the floor to Vinod. You just go ahead and just ask the question.
Yeah. Let me start the video.
Yeah.
This paper has got two very important points. Number one, it's on code authorship attribution. Number one. Number two, it's based on neural networks. So there are non-neural network methods available. Several non-neural networks available, and several other techniques also to identify the author of a particular malware or a particular virus or something like that. Now, she says she has got a neural network based representation of these user profiles or programmer profiles or many other profiles, and then she's analyzing the whole set of programs, and she's creating master list, and then she's comparing it. She's comparing the particular malware with the master list, and she's predicting who could be the programmer or something like that. Now I have question number one. The question is already there on the screen. What is the advantage of your method over the two earlier non-neural representations of methods, namely identified and SCAP? These two are the most famous methods in the world for authorship identification. At least theoretically, these two are the best methods in the world. Particularly the SCAP method, the second method, and both of them are non-neural representations. Non-neural approaches to authorship identification. What is the advantage of your method than these two earlier methods?
Feng, please just feel free just to answer.
Is the author here?
Yes, she's here.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yes. So I first answer the chat box the question. Sorry. Because we use the natural method, this can this cannot rely the head capital. You can extract the data without rely also on merely. It save the time and save the time and the save the time and the people's time and people and they can ultimately learn the futures of programmers. It is very very save time and easy. The two questions is why do you care it as binary code as ship object? Because our paper is do example based on binary code. The source code is difficult to get source code in actually series. So we can inspect the binary code. It can better application in malware application. Many analysts. Sorry, my English is not good.
But it's good. I got an impression that what you answered here is just that you just has as input the binary programs and they are disassembled and used. That's I believe the point. Did I get you right? I believe that was your answer.
Did she answer my second question?
I believe that's
the
answer that I understood, you know. The answer is just that actually, if you, I mean, my understanding from the paper here is just that the inter, you know, they just receive, as an input, they have binaries. And then
I know, I've gone through the paper.
Sure.
I've gone through the paper. But
Sure.
normally in all such things, they just call source code authorship attribution. Most of the researchers in the world called such things as source code authorship attribution.
Okay, I see your point
but
now.
she used binary code authorship attribution. Does it mean that she can, her program can do only binary code authorship attribution and not the source code? That's what my question.
Sure. Thank you. Do you see
normally,
the question?
Normally, it does both. Most methods do both.
Yes, absolutely. I see. So, I mean, the idea here is just that why don't you call it a source code authorship attribution as this is most commonly called?
Can you speak again?
Yeah.
I can't understand.
Okay. I could just write it generally. This is called.
Shall I ask one more question?
Yes, please go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like
Yes. Can you see, Feng? The question for the audience, I read it while you're just reading it on the chat, is could you please explain how its master database is formulated? I mean, what linguistic technology is used?
Because we our experiment is based on binary code. Our binary code is got to C++ and compared by GCC. So in the disassemble progress, we use the IDA to get the information.
Okay. I believe Vinod asked something else. Actually, I just
yes.
Okay. So, well, yeah. Yeah, please do. Please do. I believe it would be good. I mean, this would be our last question. Please reframe it otherwise that for Frank to be able to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question here is just that you need just to have a list of many malware programmers for your method. How do you make it? Which approach? Yes.
So I understand. I in the paper I think my technology is can application the malware programmer detection. But in this paper we only put import in the identification the programmer. So we use so we don't use the malware programmer database instead of the code jam reply the malware programmers. So this.
Okay. So I mean, you didn't consider the case of the malware program as you just try to predict only the right programmer. Just concentrate on that. Guys, I would really appreciate to continue this discussion, but we are kind of at 3-4 minutes over time.
Yeah,
so
one more, Makan.
Sure.
One more point.
Okay, then go ahead, please, Vinod. Yeah, you used the word clustering, but you did not explain it. My question was based on this word. Why clustering? Can you just explain the word clustering? Why, when you use the clustering in your paper, what do you mean by it, I guess?
Cluster. My paper used the cluster method. Is cluster the program some programmers there in costing the costing. This is when we import a unknown the code programmer, we can identify the programmer is belong to the virtual cluster. cluster, and indefinite programmer is belong to the cluster.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I mean, I just believe that, we take this just to conclude the session. I would just really want us to take the time just to thank all the authors and co-authors, and especially Vinod for just being here and asking his questions. It was just really useful just to have him just, working with this. And thank you, Vinod, for being here. Thank you very much for your just, time and effort just, to go through the entire session and ask questions.
This is the Indian way of saying thank you.
Okay, thank you then.
Yes.
Thank you again. I would just remind, as I just have been, I want to remind everybody that next year the conference would be in Singapore.
Welcome. Good afternoon. Good morning from wherever you are. Welcome to session 5 of the 11th International Conference on Digital Forensics and Cybercrime. My name is Daryl Johnson. I am an associate professor in computing security at Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, New York, and I will be your moderator for this session. The program for this session includes 3 papers. For each paper, we will play the recording of the author's presentation. The author is present in this Zoom session to answer your questions after the presentation. After the presentation, each presentation, I will introduce the discussant for that paper, who will start the 15-minute question and answer period. After the discussant finishes, I will open the floor to anyone else who has questions. I ask that you type your questions into the chat, and we'll try to address as many of them as we have time during this session. When we get to your question, please briefly state your name and affiliation and read your question. The first paper is A Partial Approach to Intrusion Detection by Dr. John Shepard. John is a lecturer and researcher in digital forensics and cybersecurity at Waterford Institute of Technology in Ireland, where he is the program director for an undergraduate degree in digital forensics and security. And now for the recording.
My name is Dr. John Shepard from the Department of Computing and Maths at Waterford Institute of Technology in the southeast of Ireland. Today I will present a paper titled A Partial Approach to Intrusion Detection at ICDF2C 20. This paper evaluates a data mining approach to the Canadian Institute for Cybersecurity Intrusion Detection System 2017 dataset using a range of experiments. My presentation will first introduce the area and the need for intrusion detection systems. I will then discuss different datasets in intrusion detection and some of the issues that have been highlighted with these over the years. I will discuss and describe the Canadian Institute for Cybersecurity Intrusion Detection System datasets and give you some background on how these were produced. I will then describe the environment used and the experiments that were conducted. I will present the results of what has been found and the conclusions and the future directions of where this work is going. In 1987, Dorothy Denning reasoned the need for intrusion detection systems that still hold true today. She said that the world is filled with computer systems that are vulnerable to a wide variety of different threats. It's not possible to find and fix all of these threats, either from a technical or from an economic perspective. So instead, something else is needed. There is a trade-off between security and functionality of these systems, so it is not possible to remove the systems that are presently in use and replace these with more secure systems. As everybody in cybersecurity knows and understands, it is not possible to build a system that can be called completely secure. This is further worsened due to the fact that very often security is not a part of the development process, though this has improved in recent years. As well as external attacks, insiders such as rogue or disgruntled employees can also be problematic. Of these datasets, the best known are probably the DARPA dataset and the NSL-KDD datasets. The DARPA dataset was originally critiqued by McHugh around 2009, where issues around the lack of documentation associated with the data were raised, along with bias and a lack of real-world data. The NSL-KDD dataset is an updated version of the 1999 KDD Cup dataset that removed redundant records, but did not overcome all of the issues that were highlighted by McHugh. These datasets have been found to have shortcomings, such as the range of attacks in the CAIDA dataset, or in the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab dataset, a lack of real-world network configuration scenarios. Other datasets, such as the ADFA, are suited to host and threat intrusion detection systems. Over 5 days in July 2017, the Canadian Institute for Cybersecurity produced a new dataset. This dataset was released in January 2018 and is available for download from their website in both PCAP and CSV formats. The dataset consists of several common protocols such as HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, SSH, and email. It includes up-to-date attacks such as brute force FTP, brute force SSH, denial of service, heartbleed, web attack, infiltration, botnet, and distributed denial of service attacks. 80 features were constructed from the data using the CIC flow meter tool. The table on this slide presents a comparison between the number of attacks present in the CIC-IDS 2017 and CIC-IDS 2018 datasets. The CIC-IDS 2018 dataset is over 200 gigabytes in size and contains an increase in the number of machines and traffic on the network. Some attack classes were poorly represented in the CIC-IDS 2017 dataset, but are present in larger numbers in the updated 2018 dataset, in particular bot and infiltration attacks. Deep learning techniques are commonly used in a variety of domains, including intrusion detection. Deep learning techniques require larger amounts of data than traditional machine learning approaches. They also require longer training times and higher performance machines. However, deep learning does tend to have the advantage of higher accuracy rates and eliminates the need for feature extraction by identifying high-level features in an incremental manner. Deep learning also tends to solve problems end to end. Five experiments were conducted on the CIC-IDS 2017 dataset in order to evaluate the performance of a partial decision tree approach. First, an evaluation of a partial decision tree approach for probing attack detection using the data employed by AXU in 2018 was conducted to test against deep learning techniques. This dataset consisted of benign and probing activity. In the second experiment, an evaluation of a partial decision tree approach for distributed denial of service detection used the data employed by USDB in 2018. Thirdly, an evaluation of a partial decision tree approach for the detection of denial of service and distributed denial of service attacks was performed. In experiment number 4, an evaluation of a partial decision tree approach using the full data set gathered over 5 days and using 12 classes. These classes are benign, port scan, FTP patator, SSH patator, denial of service, distributed denial of service, heartbleed, web attack, brute force, web attack cross-site scripting, infiltration, botnet, and web attack SQL injection. The final experiment was an evaluation of a partial decision tree approach to a 10-feature dataset created by applying principal component analysis to the dataset. Each of these experiments was conducted in the WECA 391 environment using the default part parameters. For the port scan data, the training and testing data were split 67% to 33% to be consistent with AXU. For the other experiments, tenfold cross-validation was used. The experiments were evaluated using a confusion matrix for each model. A binary classification system produces a confusion matrix with 4 possible outcomes. These are true positive, the class is correctly determined as class 1. True negative, the class is correctly determined as class 2. False positive, the class is incorrectly classified as class 1. False negative, the class is incorrectly classified as class 2. The overall success rate or accuracy is the number of successful classifications divided by the total number of classifications as shown. The error rate is 1 minus the overall success rate. This slide presents the confusion matrix of a partial decision tree approach to the port scan data from the CICDF dataset. As with AXU's work, the data was split as 67% training data, 33% testing data. It took 71 seconds to build a model. This produced an accuracy rate of 99.98% and a rule set of 15 rules. It missed 11 attacks in the dataset and misclassified 8 normal patterns as suspicious. This model outperformed the deep learning methods proposed by AXU at the end of 2018, along with Manimugharan's deep belief network, recurrent neural network, spike neural network, and full forward neural network models. The second version of the dataset used was the distributed denial of service dataset. It consisted of 225,746 instances and took 63 seconds to build a model. It produced an accuracy rate of 99.99% over 14 rules. The model misclassified 7 attacks and flagged 10 normal usage patterns as malicious out of a total of the 225,745 instances. Ustabe analysed the same version of the dataset using a multi-layer perceptron approach and achieved an accuracy rate of 91%. In experiment 3, denial of service and distributed denial of service data were compiled together and a model was built for denial of service, distributed denial of service attack detection. The inclusion of the denial of service attacks led to a very slight decline in the accuracy, and the model now missed 71 attacks, which was a further 69 above the distributed denial of service model. 165 patterns of normal usage were misclassified as opposed to 10 with the distributed denial of service model. Mani-Mugaran evaluated deep belief, recurrent neural networks, spike neural network and full forward neural network for the same purpose, and found deep belief neural networks to achieve the highest accuracy rate at a rate of 96.67%. The result of the fourth analysis can be seen here. For experiment 4, the completed dataset with its 12 attack classes was analysed. The model had an accuracy of 99.98% and was built in 7,812 seconds. It contained 235 rules. This table presents the breakdown of the classification of each attack in the dataset. From it we can see that the numbers are high down the central diagonal, indicating that most classes have been correctly classified. Column A indicates all of the attacks that have been missed and categorized as normal behavior. We can see from row A that more false alarms were raised with the model than with the classes missed. The results here are good apart from cross-site scripting, infiltration, bot and SQL injection attacks. Just 72% of bot attacks have been detected, 67% of infiltration attacks, and 57% of SQL injections. Cross-site scripting performed extremely poor, misclassifying 91% of attacks. These low results may be due to the very low training numbers associated with these classes. This table presents the confusion matrix for the PCA dataset. The variance used to produce the dataset was 0.95, and the 10 most important new features produced from this were used to create the new dataset. The model produced an accuracy rate of 99.36%. The time to produce the model fell from 7,812 seconds to 1,767 seconds. Though the overall average accuracy held for the PCA data, when we look at the classification of individual instances across classes, we can see declines in almost all classes. One of the most notable changes in terms of missed attacks was the denial of service class. The true positive rate for the smaller classes such as cross-site scripting, infiltration, bot and SQL injection all fell further. Most noticeably, SQL injections were not detected at all. However, in comparison to other models available in the literature, we can see that both of these PART methods has outperformed the deep neural network approach employed by Fernandez. To conclude, in this paper, a partial decision tree approach to intrusion detection was evaluated on the ICDF 2017 dataset. 5 versions of this dataset were used in this work: the port scan data, the distributed denial of service data, the denial of service with the distributed denial of service data, the 12 class dataset with all features present, and a reduced version of the dataset with 10 features produced from a PCA analysis of the data. The results were compared with deep learning approaches found in the literature. In each instance, the partial decision tree approach outperformed the deep learning approach in terms of accuracy. The PART algorithm achieved accuracy rates of 99.98% on the port scan data, 99.99% on the DDoS data, 99.97% on the DOS/DDoS data, 99.89% on the entire dataset, and 99.4% on the PCA dataset. The accuracy fell slightly when the dataset was reduced, however the time taken was significantly reduced. From this work, part is well suited to the detection of port scan, denial of service and distributed denial of service attacks. Future work in the area of intrusion detection involves further evaluation of the features currently available in this dataset, along with the investigation of new features that could be created from raw PCAP files available to researchers. There is also scope for the evaluation of hybrid approaches between traditional data mining and deep learning techniques. As alternative deployment architectures emerge that are more specific to domains such as IoT, vehicle, cloud, and mobile computing environments, work is needed in these areas regarding the creation of new datasets, the suitability of current analysis techniques, and detection methods in these different environments, along with the correlation of results from detection engines speaking to one another. There is also a need for work in the area of explainable AI for network forensics and intrusion detection systems. I would like to thank you for listening and to thank the School of Science and WIT for funding this research.
I would love, excuse me. I would like to introduce the discussant for this paper, Dr. Prakash. Dr. Prakash is an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Amrita School of Engineering in India. Dr. Prakash, would you please lead off the question and answer period?
So good morning. So thanks for the nice introduction, Dr. Daryl Johnson. So it was a nice presentation, Dr. John Shepard. I am having some couple of questions. Okay, the first question is, The first question is, so if you look into the performance of decision trees, it is comparatively equivalent to that of AdaBoost and Random Forest in terms of functionality. So then why you specifically chosen the decision tree alone for this work? This is my first question. John?
We can't hear you, John.
Apologies for that, sorry. I decided to look at the partial decision trees because they tend to have high accuracy rates as opposed to decision trees that use search and conquer techniques. And they also tend to be faster than divide and conquer techniques. I'd actually done some work many years ago looking at partial decision trees for the KDD Cup dataset back around 2004. And I was impressed at how well they had done at the time. Now later on, I tested them again when the NSL KDD dataset came out, and I did notice a decrease in them. So I was interested to have a look at them again when it came to the CIC dataset and see how they had performed or how they had changed since then. Because I kind of felt that a lot of the results from the earlier datasets didn't have the same level of strength behind them when people had kind of identified weaknesses in those datasets in terms of bias, that there wasn't the real world type scenarios, and it was attacks that weren't up to date. So I was interested to take a look at it and to apply that algorithm to it again. There was also already some previous work that had been done using random forest techniques. So I wanted to do something that had a bit more originality to it. So that's why I decided to apply that technique. And also sometimes we've kind of progressed over the years from more heuristics and through to kind of decision tree techniques and linear models, and then on to deep learning, and more recently even meta learning. And sometimes I kind of think that the more traditional machine learning approaches get lost and get forgotten about. So I was interested to go back and look at them, and I also like the level of transparency that there is with some of those techniques compared to some of the deep learning techniques. And I think that's an important kind of aspect as well in digital forensics, with areas like explainable AI and some of those things.
Yeah, fine. It was a detailed answer anyway. So the second question is, why the author has not used the convolutional neural network instead of this decision tree, partial decision tree?
Instead of which, sorry?
So why the author has not used the convolutional neural network, CNN? So otherwise you would have chosen the deep belief networks too. Why the author had not chosen this CNN or DBN for their work? Convolutional neural network. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't actually applied the convolutional neural network to it yet, but it is something that I am looking at doing in the future.
Fine. So the third question and the final question, based on the full dataset analysis, why the detection rate is worst for injection attack, especially for the web XSS and web SQL? Why the particular analysis detection rate is worst?
When I reduce the data set, I'm obviously losing some of the information that helps detect those attacks. But in general, I think that the amount of those attacks is extremely low in the data set anyway. So because of that, I don't think this is a good data set for trying to detect those attacks. If you look at some of the earlier data sets, one of the issues in that was bias. And particularly with stuff like the KDD Cup data set, there was a huge amount of the actual traffic was based around denial of service attacks. But with this data set, there's a more acceptable level of denial of service, distributed denial of service, port scan type data. But when you get to the SQL injections and stuff, it's very, very low. So I think with some attacks, it was in the hundreds or possibly even lower out of a data set that has a huge amount of instances in it. So it's not really reflective of it. And I think in intrusion detection, either as a real-time detection tool or as a tool for network forensic investigators later, I think we need to have lots of different layers of modules looking for different things. I don't think it's a one algorithm you throw at it and it should detect everything. So it's about, I think, taking a silo of data and trying to filter down through that data to detect what's left and to see what's left. And I think there's also an issue there that sometimes people like to throw a detection system or an algorithm at a data set and they find the first thing that pops out and they think that's it, the problem solved. But they're not willing to go and see, is there alternative attacks that have also been taking place? So is there like much slower attacks that are happening over long and sustained periods of time that are not being picked up on and that are getting through the net, and a more distinguishable or more identifiable, more obvious type attack is being picked up and an investigator thinks that they've solved all the problems when the real stuff is going beneath the surface.
Thank you, Dr. John Shepherd. That's all from my side.
Thank you
Dr.
very much,
Darrell,
Dr. Prakash.
Yeah. Dr. Darrell, I finished my queries.
Thank you very much. If anybody else in the audience has questions, please enter them into the chat and we'll go through them as we get with what time we have left. Habib Luafi has a question. Could you read it, please?
Would you like me to read it out, Daryl?
Sure.
Yeah. So did you explore feature reduction? I mean, are all the features needed for all the types of attack? So the feature reduction that we explored was using principal component analysis, and we reduced the data set to 10 features. When we did this, we noticed a slight drop in the accuracy rates, but there was a considerable time saving. So we reduced the time to about 20% of what I had previously taken. However, the attacks again, I suppose the distributed denial of service attack didn't suffer a huge loss. The port scan didn't suffer a huge loss. Denial of service went down a little bit, but attacks again like the cross-site scripting and some of the other web attacks and the SQL injections, they again performed extremely poorly. But there is more work to be done in the PCA area and looking at it specifically to individual attacks as opposed to in the data set as a whole.
Very good. As an observation, it seems that one of your biggest challenges is data sets. What do you think you would do next to try to address that problem?
Well, the Canadian Institute for Cybersecurity seems to be working very hard on this area. I did my experiments on this data set, but as I was doing them, a newer data set came out, but it was 200 gigs in size. So I've since started to look into that in more detail. And in the last few months as well, they've also launched a new data set, which is just on distributed denial of service data. So if anybody is looking for data sets for artificial intelligence techniques, there's a lot of different ones available from them to do with Tor networks and IoT and botnets and classifying different kinds of malware traffic and stuff like that. So it's a very good place that I would recommend people to go and have a look if they're interested in that area. But it is a constant issue that as new attacks emerge, and trying to be able to detect these new attacks, that new data sets will be needed and are needed. And also, as I mentioned in my presentation, as new environments like IoT come along, we're seeing new problems and new issues.
Oh, good. If you get a chance, could you share a link to that Canadian
Institute for Cybersecurity?
Yeah, if you could share that in the chat for everybody, I would appreciate that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much, Darrell. I'd be more than happy to.
Any other questions? All right, we're just about wrapped up for our time here. Thank you, Dr. John Shepard, and thank you, Dr. Prakash, for being a discussant for this paper too. I thought it went very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Prakash. Thank you, Darrell.
Thank you. Thank you, John Shepard. Thank you, Dr. Barrett.
Okay, let's move on to the next paper. We're a minute early, but I think that's okay. The next paper is Retracing the Flow of the Stream, Investigating Cody Streaming Services by Samuel Bromley. Corporal Todd Bromley is with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Digital Forensic Services Section in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Now, did I get the name wrong, Todd?
No, not at all. I go by both names.
Samuel and Todd?
That is correct.
Oh, okay. For a minute I read that and I go, oh, I made a mistake here. So, okay.
No, you're doing great.
All right, thank you. All right, let's play the recording now, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Samuel Todd Bromley with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Together with Professor John Shepard, Mark Scanlon, and Niall Lecoq, we did a paper called Retracing the Flow of the Stream, Investigating Cody Streaming Services. Cody is a ubiquitous software program that allows for viewing of videos on a host of different operating systems, from Macintosh, Linux, Android, and of course Windows-based systems. It even includes allowing the watching of videos on the old Xbox systems using XBMC. The aim of this research paper was threefold. How should a forensic investigation of Cody be conducted? What can be recovered from a Cody system? And where are the Cody forensic artifacts located? In our research, we found that Cody has not been viewed or hasn't there hasn't been a paper outlining where these artifacts are located. There has been some similar related work in IPTV forensics, which involves the analysis of video playing software from the internet, that's all IPTV is, and Android set-top boxes, which is right now the primary method of using Kodi to get videos online and to your TV. We conducted our analysis using virtual machines, and using virtual machines allowed for accurate change analysis by taking a snapshot before the installation and the manipulation of the software, and then taking a snapshot afterwards, comparing the two and determining where the artifacts were located. Initially, I thought a great deal of information would be located in the registry. However, our analysis determined that that wasn't the case at all. There was very little information in the registry, and the vast majority of the artifacts are located in standard SQLite databases in the following location. This is an example of a Windows-based machine, and as you can see, a Kodi user data databases. The X's on the database in the name are simply numbers that will change depending on the version of Kodi that you're using. I have found that a great deal of information was gleaned from the add-ons database and the My Videos. This shows when the video was played, where the source of the video came from, whether it's from a USB or whether it's from a URL online, and all of these databases do have artifacts located within them that can be valuable to an investigator. So the question arose is whether the databases in Kodi operate similarly on different operating systems as it does on Windows. And through our analysis and research, it was determined that they're the same databases, including the same database names, except their folder is slightly different. As you can see, here's the location of the files in those databases on an Android machine, and here's the location on Linux-based machines. They're very, very similar, and that's to be understood given that Android and Linux are related operating systems. The Kodi log file is the one non-SQLite database, the one section that has artifacts in it that isn't a database, and it's simply a log file called Kodi.txt. There's also a backup Kodi.txt. And the key for this as an investigator is it contains a great deal of information. However, it gets deleted every time that Kodi is started. The second backup is removed. So it's very important as investigators to get that information and copy out that text file before restarting the program. Otherwise, you will lose data. Conclusion. In the past, Kodi was used primarily for free illegal viewing of copyrighted material from public video sources on the internet. Right now, there are paid services that involve organized crime, such as Real Debrid or similar type services, and those organizations are quite large, and there's quite a bit of money, given that it is a paid service and that many people use Kodi. In Canada, we had a situation where child pornography was being created and sold to people using DVDs. It is my fear that Kodi could be used in a similar manner as a paid service, and this is what I fear for in the future. Thank you.
Well, excellent. I'd like to now introduce the discussant for this paper, Dr. George Markowski, Professor of Computer Science and Associate Chair for Graduate Studies at Missouri Institute of Science and Technology. Dr. Markowski, would you lead off the questions for this paper, please?
Yes. So, Todd, thank you very much for your presentation. It's certainly an important area that needs to be addressed. I was struck a little bit by one of your comments in your presentation where you seem to suggest that Kodi was used primarily for criminal activity, but aren't there many legitimate uses for Cody? I mean, I'm not to say that there aren't criminals using it, but would you say that most Cody activity is illegal?
In Canada, we make a distinction here between copyright violations and illegality. So I guess to answer that, it is my belief that Cody's primary use is for the streaming of copyrighted material. I believe in the United States that is a crime. In Canada, it's under a separate act. It's not under the criminal code. So I guess in that respect, in your country it would be criminal, in this country it's not. But no, the real reason people are downloading Cody is to stream illegal videos. That's my experience.
Okay, do you have any, I mean, I would be interested in just seeing statistics, because when you go to their site, it appears like, you know, at least they're promoting that there are lots of legitimate reasons that one would be interested in Cody. So I think that might be a follow-up paper, you know, that might be of interest.
We'll see if I do my PhD, maybe that'll be the next thesis.
Okay, fair enough. Now, one of the things I was struck, well, in reading your paper is that Cody seems to leave lots of information strewn all over the place. I mean, it suggests that, you know, there are all these SQL databases, there's the log file, so it's just kind of dripping with information that a forensic scientist would love to, you know, get their hands on. How easy would it be for a person to modify any of these files so as to throw a forensic investigator off?
It is definitely possible. In my experience dealing with criminals, I am a police officer and I actively investigate crimes and we do a lot of searches. Most of the people we deal with in the criminal element are not very tech savvy. But it is possible, as you mentioned, you could alter those databases to hide or even throw the track off.
Yeah, well, I figured that probably most of the criminals themselves probably don't know much about log files and don't know how to open an SQLite database, so you probably don't have to worry too much. But it leads me to another question. I mean, the source code for Cody is I mean, it's open source. Do you know of any sort of organized effort to create a crime-friendly version of Cody, or are people just using the standard Cody software?
From what I've seen, actually, Cody is crime-friendly now. It's very easy to install the add-ons that allow copyrighted material. There are paid services such as the Debrid services, which offers a paid access to some copyrighted material. And those have been linked to organized crime.
I guess maybe I didn't phrase my question quite correctly. What I meant was, is there anybody working on trying to modify the Cody source code in a way that would make it difficult to do forensic analysis on it?
I haven't seen that, but anything is possible, Doctor.
Okay, all right. One of the things I was wondering about is, as you know, we've got a pandemic roaring around and people are spending more time at home. Do you see any kind of uptick in kind of the use of things like Cody for, has it been an uptick of criminal activity because of people being confined to home?
I haven't seen that, but I don't have stats on the amount of times it's downloaded or the amount of the vast majority of Cody being used for illegal purposes is they're coming off of these TV boxes that are coming out of China, and unfortunately I don't have statistics on the sales of those boxes, but I would definitely imagine that a lot of people will take this technology.
Now, I noticed that over the past several years, the foundation that created Cody and pushes it, XBMC, has been trying to take steps against, you know, the add-ons that do downloads of copyrighted material. I gather from your talk that they're not being very effective at disabling these add-ons. And do you think that their efforts are really legitimate and it's just that it's a difficult problem, or do you think that they are kind of giving lip service to it as opposed to really trying?
I guess we enter into the portion where you're asking me to speculate. Since I'm not on the stand, I can. What I would suspect is that no, they are actively trying to distance themselves. I think they genuinely care about their software, the XBMC Foundation, and they're definitely terrified of the MPP or the MPAA, which is the those that are trying to enforce the copyright laws and have sued Cody/XBMC Foundation in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So they're definitely trying to put them arm's length away.
Okay, and my last question was, it seemed to me that a lot of your conclusions were based on actually doing an examination of the software as it was running and the output and stuff like that. Did any part of your investigation involve actually going through the source code and understanding, you know, more detail what it's likely to do, or, you know, or were you based mostly on doing a forensic analysis of the results of Cody?
No, I'm truth be told, I'm a digital forensic analyst, so my focus was on the forensics of the software and from the criminality point of it. The source code from an investigation point of view is not relevant. It's more what the suspect has done with the software that our legal system is more concerned with. So my focus is on the forensics and the artifacts.
Okay, well, that concludes my questions. Thank you for a very provocative talk, and good luck to you with your future research.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. We got a few minutes left. Does anybody have any further questions for Todd Bromley here?
Yeah, good morning. Myself, Dr. Prakash. So I'm here. So it was a nice presentation about this Cody streaming services. Sorry. So good morning, Mr. Todd. So yeah, fine. So the question is, if you are looking into the streaming services, okay, so the attackers could able to monitor the type of streaming while it is transferring through the network traffic. So is that Cody could able to avoid this kind of issues related to the streaming through the network traffic? That is my only question.
I'll see if I understand that correctly, Doctor. I guess you're asking about sort of where the source of the videos are, or sort of while in process through the network, through analyzing network traffic. Is that correct?
Yeah, while the particular video has been streaming, so the attacker could able to view the data is okay, could able to understand the characteristics of the network of the streaming data. So in that case, whether there is any mechanism to protect that kind of issue with respect to this Cody streaming service? That's my question.
I'm afraid I don't know. I didn't perform any network analysis of the Cody streaming service, as I sort of mentioned in Dr. Markowski's question. My focus was mainly on artifacts that are left on a target system.
Okay, fine. Thank you. That's all.
Any other questions? All right, I have one question. In your paper, you say we describe a new method to quickly locate Cody artifacts. Could you, I'm curious if you could expound a little bit on what that method was, since you were doing both Android and Linux systems in different platforms.
Certainly, and initially when I came into the research, I thought it would be, there'd be more artifacts in the registry, which is where most artifacts are located with a lot of the peer-to-peer sharing software. But I was pleasantly surprised to find out that it isn't. There's actually very little in the registry. And in hindsight, looking back, I'm not surprised by that, because it is open source software, so it has to be transportable and to various operating systems. So it makes sense that the artifacts are located in an SQLite database, and they share the common directory structure amongst all the different operating systems. So what was novel and what we are sort of bringing to the table from an investigator point of view was the fact that investigators, if they're on scene, can quickly locate those artifacts with the log file and those databases, so that they can quickly get that information out, especially if it's an investigation that's high priority or needs to be solved immediately.
How did you identify the changes to the file system or the registry that were associated with Cody? Was there a process that you used?
There was indeed, yeah. I used process analysis. It's in the paper. I forget the exact piece of software I used, but it measures all the changes to the operating system during a period of time. So using snapshots of before and after, and then comparing the two, that's what led to the location of the artifacts.
Excellent, excellent. Because that's always a big challenge to find all of the artifacts from a particular application. So that's why I was curious what you used. Okay. Well, very good, very good. Any other questions? We have a few minutes left in this session. All right, then let's move on to the next. We're a little early, but I think that's okay. Thank you, George Markowski, Dr. George Markowski, for being a discussant, and thank you, Todd Bromley, for presenting your paper.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next paper is cybersecurity methodology for specialized behavior analysis by Edgar Padilla. Edgar Padilla is a PhD student at the University of Texas at El Paso. He is also an enterprise information security administrator for the university. His research interests include risk analysis and secure software architecture. If we could play the video.
Hello, my name is Edgar Padilla from the University of Texas at El Paso. I'll be presenting our work, Cybersecurity Methodology for Specialized Behavior Analysis. The co-authors for this work are Dr. Jaime Acosta from the Army Research Laboratory and Dr. Christopher Kickenbell, also from the University of Texas at El Paso. The motivation for this cybersecurity methodology. Inadequacy of existing cybersecurity datasets to analyze human behavior. Usually, scientific studies or experiments recruit non-technical participants. This happens since qualified participants are hard to find or expensive. As an example, participants could be drawn from Amazon Mechanical Turks, where a large number of non-technical participants are easy to find and inexpensive. Additionally, many experiments are non-technical in nature. Some experiments resort to abstraction to simplify scenarios that otherwise would be too complicated to build and complex for participants to understand. Our methodology aims at recruiting novice technical participants. Some datasets are speculative in nature. We can usually find this in psychology, where hypothetical questions and the corresponding hypothetical answers may not accurately reflect actual actions from participants when interacting in real life with real systems. Our methodology aims on capturing these key missing interactions. Because many studies don't capture these interactions, the data is incomplete. As a result, models built from these studies fail to capture practical interactions of attackers and defenders with real-world environments where higher intrinsic complexities exist. But how about real data coming from forensic investigations? Usually this data is not released or is altered by removing network packet payloads and anonymization. or simply the data that you need is simply not existent from any source. The aim of this methodology is to compile near real-world datasets for human behavior analysis that capture technical interactions between cybersecurity actors in the absence of qualified participants. This methodology is designed to bridge the gap between non-technical and highly technical cybersecurity experiments that intend to understand human behavior, whether they are attackers or defenders. Even though we propose working with novice participants, they can provide powerful insights into human behavior, such as propensity towards certain actions. We look at human behavior, such as decision-making on specific scenarios with highly technical complexity. This methodology does not serve the purpose of gathering data from domain experts. We elevate the participant's skill level required for a technical study as opposed to simplifying an experiment and considerably diminishing its impact and relevance and the relevance of its findings. Our methodology has 5 stages, starting with questionnaires. Questionnaires have the purpose of collecting participants' ground truth. This information is usually not available from attackers in a genuine forensic analysis. With these questions, researchers can inquire about psychological, demographic, and similar characteristics of individuals and build profiles. The second stage of this methodology is theoretical education, where participants are taught cybersecurity concepts, tools, tactics, and techniques targeted towards meeting the goals of the experiment. In this stage, you don't want to teach everything there is to know about a subject or a tool. Instead, you limit the scope of the learning material to the necessary in order for participants to successfully complete the experiment. Providing too much information, you just might overwhelm the participants. The third stage is practical education. Our methodology emphasizes this stage. Practical education ought to be directed towards aiding participants improve understanding of concepts, tools, and systems in the experimental environment. This stage serves the purpose of complementing theoretical concepts and the development of practical experience to reinforce learning in preparation for the experiment. As part of this educational effort, we measure teaching and learning effectiveness with these other 4 stages: learning goals, scenario specification, scenario execution, and learning achieved. The learning goals stage aims to clearly define the scope of the learning plan. What is the user supposed to learn? The scenario specification stage defines the desirable tactics and techniques participants should be able to follow during an experiment. The scenario execution stage is concerned with the actual actions performed by participants during an experiment. And finally, the learning achieved is the credible learning acquired by participants. For our methodology, we're primarily interested in the relationship between scenario specification and scenario execution, labeled with number 2. This is because we want users to be able to consistently progress through the experimental scenarios. Long-term learning is not pursued at this time. As you can see, education is an important piece of this methodology. Now let's continue with our main methodology stages. After practical education comes the experimental scenarios. The design of this stage is very important, deciding what technologies to implement, how detailed data you may want to collect for later analysis, and also the decision about whether you want to use emulation or simulation. On the one hand, simulation only reproduces the external visible behavior from a model. This is more efficient and inexpensive, but fails to capture low-level interactions. On the other hand, emulations do reproduce low-level interactions, but emulations increase the system development time and complexity in addition to greater computational resources. Nonetheless, emulations allow comprehensive experimental setting where forensic level interactions can be recorded and analyzed. As part of the current work on implementing this methodology, we're working with Apache Guacamole as a web client to enable remote SSH and RDP connections to our experimental environment. Guacamole increases accessibility to participants and also could be accessible from any browser. Another technology we are employing is the Common Open Research Emulator, CORE, as the Center for Experimental Environment. CORE facilitates the creation of network scenarios and supports connecting emulated networks with real networks. The final stage in this methodology is to create and validate new or existing models from the experimental data collected. This stage is open to any research area such as psychology or mathematics to create and validate their own models. Conclusion and future work. Existing datasets do not provide context for researchers to account for cybersecurity actors' intentions, technical skills, psychological traits, and demographics. Additionally, most of this research does not capture realistic interactions between cybersecurity actors such as attackers and defenders. Similarly to the scarcity of valid data, cybersecurity professionals are difficult to find and expensive to recruit when conducting technical studies. We have defined a 5-stage methodology that works around the inadequate sources of qualified cybersecurity participants. Our methodology elevates the skills of novice technical students and professionals to an acceptable proficiency, turning them into qualified participants. This leveling enables participants to complete realistic experimental scenarios using tools and techniques that mimic those used by field professionals. This cybersecurity methodology, we believe, is well suited for highly technical decision-making experiments.
Excellent. I would like to introduce the discussant for this paper. This is Dr. Prakash again, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Amrita School of Engineering in India. Dr. Prakash, could you please lead the questioning?
Thank you, Dr. Derek. It was a nice presentation, Mr. Edgar Padilla. Here are some couple of questions for you. With respect to the paper I just studied some days back. So the first question is whether the Amazon Mechanical Turk is the only method or only website to provide the details for the data set of your project?
No, we didn't use Mechanical Turks. We just mentioned Mechanical Turks as a common way for, at least for psychology and for, I mean, I've seen it for some personality related experiments, not necessarily psychology, but also whoever you need some people to interact that could be done in a web-based manner, it's used through Mechanical Turks. We are proposing this as an alternative method for that, since, I mean, for Mechanical Turks, I mean, I know that you can do some filtering based on education and some other traits of participants, but you're not necessarily getting skilled people for your experiment. So in this one, we're trying to educate and actually gather the information from the target population that we want. I mean, I've heard a lot of times, I mean, and that maybe the quality of Mechanical Turks might not be the highest at some points. So that's why we were trying to look for some kind of alternative way of gathering information from participants.
The second question is, how you are choosing the participants? Is there any specific characteristics required for identifying the participants for this analysis?
For the participants, we're trying to as we mentioned for the methodology, we're trying to gather the information from technical participants, but might not be as highly technical as necessary for the experiment. So for now, we're trying to gather, depending on the experiment, but I mean, for the experiment that we're trying to work right now, should be participants that have some technical, maybe some programming skills, some network information, some network knowledge. So for that, we are going with computer science students, with IT professionals, with electrical engineering, and then we educate them on the experiment that we're conducting, on the specific needs of the experiment that we're conducting.
It was also mentioned in your paper that you are supposed to train the participants, novice participants, with some kind of knowledge in cybersecurity. Okay? So in order to work with your test bed, to what extent the cybersecurity topics are conducted for these participants? Because if you are talking about the cybersecurity, it was a vast field. So what is the threshold you are fixing to teach the participants, and then you are conducting the survey or analysis among them?
So it depends on the experiment that you're conducting. I mean, what you're gonna be training them on. But if for the one that we have been conducting is about networks and scanning. So we provide, at that point, we provide them some very basic information about how a network works, because they don't need to know exactly the details about protocols and all the different complexity. We just give them, I mean, what they need to know, the information that they need to know. And we give them some information as well, some training, more extensive training on Nmap and how to interpret the results from Nmap, and saying like, okay, you found this is an open port, an active host. So I mean, we just go exactly in target information that they need to know to be able to complete a technical training. We don't go too deep into the details, unnecessary information at that point. And after we train them, they're being given some questions to make sure that they understood the topics that they were trained on. And after that, they're given some practice exercises before the actual experiment, so they get to do some hands-on experience, I mean, before they're thrown into the fire of the actual experiment. So they're allowed to play then and freely experiment themselves.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the nice presentation and topic what you have chosen, because during this COVID lockdown, everyone is supposed to use the online transaction, online mode of functionality. So in that perspective, all the particular people are not that much familiar in this technology. So that if you could able to analyze with respect to their behavior, it will be very fine. Yeah. And the last question is, you spoke about the common open research emulator with respect to your work. So whether there is any other similar kind of emulator which is available, and why you are choosing specifically this emulator for this work? There are many other emulators available. That's the final question.
Yeah, so for the technology that we're using, we mentioned that we also use Guacamole, and the purpose of that is that we even before COVID, we were trying to do this all web-based. So everybody with a computer, they could participate in the experiment without having to require any physical attendance anywhere. So even before COVID, we were already there. So, and without having to install anything on their computer or any kind of configuration, we do the configuration of the backend for the user. So that was our target, make it all web-based, and you could do an SSH terminal, or you could do an RDP connection, everything, all the technicalities that you need to conduct this kind of experiment, you could do it from your home, and you could do it from a web browser. And regarding the question from Core, the core was basically used because there was some experience on a research group with that tool, and I mean, it has worked pretty well. I mean, for the experiment that we have been conducting, we are able to emulate a network of 100 hosts per participant without, I mean, with really small machines, with a machine of 1 gigabyte of RAM, and I mean, not too powerful virtual machine. So we are able to, it's a pretty good tool for being able to emulate large networks. So that's why we went with it. But yeah, definitely there are many tools that could do some similar work. We're using that one as reference, as to give an example of the tools that are possible to use and the capabilities that it provides. But I mean, yeah, if anything else works better for your research, that's the way you should go.
Thank you for your answers. Thank you, Edgar Padilla. Thank you, Daryl, Doctor.
Thank you.
I have one question, I guess. I don't see any questions in the chat session, so I'll ask you one. This is an area that's interesting to me, and my one question is that you're using students who are unskilled and then making them skilled, and then capturing their behavior. Have you tried finding some volunteer professional pen testers and seeing how they do?
We, as part of the experiment, we have involved a few, not professional pen testers, but actually people with way more professional experience than just students. I mean, so it has been mostly students, but we have also IT professionals or PhD students with experience, and they have been also going through this experiment. So we try to gather as much information as possible for most of the backgrounds as possible as well. So it's not just limited to students. I'm sorry?
Were the results significantly different between those two groups?
No, not really, because again, I mean, the way you design the experiment is that you want to measure decision making at skill level. So your experiment is designed in that way. You don't want, you pretty much, even like the way I mentioned, we were using Nmap, and for Nmap, we limit the options that they can use, so they cannot come up with their fancy tools, and so they're very limited on what they do. We already put them with the available option, and you have to use this. So again, we're just measuring their decision making and not their skills.
Okay, very good.
Something like that would be, for example, if their propensity for risk, so might not be necessarily associated to the skill level. So it's more based on the personality. Are you going to be willing to take more risk or less risk if you're going to be detected when you're scanning a network, if there's an intrusion detection system?
The difference between the two groups would be their understanding of risk. Professionals are going to be more one's going to understand that if I stick my hand into a garbage bag in the middle of Colorado, I might come out with a bear. And they might understand the risks better than somebody who lives in Hawaii. It's a different risk of putting your hand in a garbage bag. So they have a different perception of the impact of risk between those two groups. So that was my interest to see what different groups might look like. Very good. Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, that brings session 5 to a close. I would like to thank the authors of the discussions and especially the audience for attending and making this a very successful session. I thought there was a lot of good conversation. Next year's ICDF2C 2021 will be held in the late fall in Singapore. It will be a much bigger event. Singapore is in the Asian home of many multinational IT companies and the Interpol Global Center for Innovation. It is very modern, multicultural, and there are many things to explore. Please spread the word and join us in Singapore next year. And I'll pass it over to Sanjay.
Okay, thanks, Daryl. I think this was a very well-run session, and I am very pleasantly surprised and happy to see all this audience right to the bitter end of the conference. Typically for online conferences, we see the attendance drop quite rapidly and only the presenters show up. But I think to the sustained effort of all of the program chairs here, Daryl, Makan, and Pavel, we've had a lot of discussion, and having all the discussions for each paper really helps. The primary reason people come to these conferences is to get some critiques on the paper so that they can make them into journal papers and to meet each other. So I think we cannot meet each other in person here, but just this interaction itself gives us a general idea about what each of us is doing and what our strengths and weaknesses are. But we certainly do hope to see you in Singapore next year when we can meet all of you in person. And this was supposed to be a much bigger conference in Boston this year, and we would have loved to have all of you there. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we were not able to host it in Boston. This conference started 11 years ago when forensics was just starting out. And over time, it has gone all over the world, including Korea, Dublin, Prague, and it has really gained in popularity and quality. So I'm very pleased to see. It started in Albany, and I started it 11 years ago. And again, it has rotated back to me. And I'm pleased to be organizing this. I also want to thank the conference managers from EAI. They did a fantastic job of keeping everything in shape and keeping everything in track. So a round of applause for Natasha, who's here with us. She certainly deserves a lot of applause for all the work that she has done. And we hope to work with her again in the next year's conference, and that'll be an even bigger success. So again, I want to reiterate that, look, now more than ever, because of COVID, it's very important that the scientific community continues to interact with each other and not let this void in physical contact and derail us from the technical achievements. And so that's why we made sure that instead of canceling the conference, we still hold it online. And I hope to continue to interact with each one of you. The whole program committee does. And we will invite several of you to be on the program committee next year and submit papers. And I hope a lot of you are again with us. It was really a pleasure to see all of you engaged in such vibrant discussion. And that probably was the most important part of this conference, all of the audience, the speakers, the discussants, and obviously, all of the co-authors of the presenters who were here. So thank you all very much.